You have probably asked yourself at some point why you suffer. Why, despite all your efforts, all your learning, all your meditation, there remains something deep within that causes you to stumble, to fall, to repeat the same painful patterns over and over again. You have tried to be kind, to be wise, to be patient, yet something invisible keeps pulling you back into confusion, into reactivity, into that familiar sense of being lost in a world that seems to make no sense. And if you have ever sat in the quiet of your own mind and wondered what lies at the very root of all this suffering, what single force could be responsible for every tear you have shed, every regret you have carried, every moment of fear and anger and despair, then you are already standing at the threshold of one of the most profound and mysterious questions in all of Buddhist philosophy. Where does ignorance come from? This is not a simple question, and I want you to know from the very beginning that we are embarking together on a journey that will challenge everything you think you know about yourself, about the nature of reality, and about the very possibility of liberation. Over the next hour, we will explore the deepest roots of human suffering. We will confront paradoxes that have puzzled practitioners for thousands of years. We will discover why the Buddha himself called this question one that leads to madness if approached incorrectly, and we will emerge with a clarity that can genuinely transform the way you live your life. But I must ask something of you. I ask that you stay with me, even when the concepts become difficult, even when you feel the urge to resist or to dismiss what you hear. Because what we are exploring today is nothing less than the key to your own liberation. Let me begin with something that might surprise you, something that might even frustrate you at first. When the Buddha was asked directly about the origin of ignorance, he did not give a straightforward answer. He did not say ignorance began at this moment, in this place, for this reason. Instead, he said something far more mysterious and far more liberating. He said that ignorance is without discoverable beginning. The Pali term is anamatagga, which means that no matter how far back you search, you will never find the first moment when ignorance arose. This is not because the Buddha did not know the answer. It is because the question itself contains a subtle trap, a hidden assumption that keeps us bound to the very ignorance we are trying to understand. Now, I already sense some of you pulling back, thinking this sounds like an evasion, like a philosophical trick to avoid a difficult question. And I understand that reaction completely. We live in a world that values clear causes and effects, beginnings and endings, origins and destinations. We want to know where things come from so that we can fix them at the source. If ignorance has a beginning, we think, then we can find that beginning and undo it. But here is where the Buddha's teaching becomes truly revolutionary, truly transformative. The very desire to find a first cause, the very assumption that there must be a beginning point, is itself a manifestation of ignorance. We are trying to use ignorant thinking to understand ignorance, and this is why the Buddha warned that pursuing this question in the wrong way leads only to more confusion. But do not despair, because there is another way to approach this question. A way that leads not to frustration, but to genuine insight and freedom. Instead of asking where ignorance came from in the distant past, we can ask a far more useful and immediate question. What sustains ignorance right now in this very moment? What feeds it? What nourishes it? What keeps it alive in your experience? This is the question that leads to liberation. Because this is the question that points to something you can actually change. The Buddha taught with extraordinary precision about what nourishes ignorance. In the Avijja Sutta, he explained that ignorance is fed by a chain of conditions, each one leading to the next in a cycle that perpetuates itself endlessly until we learn to interrupt it. At the most immediate level, ignorance is nourished by unwise attention, what the Pali texts call ayaniso manasakara. This means attending to experience in a superficial way, focusing on the wrong aspects of things, missing the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface of appearances. When you look at a pleasant experience and see only the pleasure, without seeing its impermanent nature, without seeing how grasping at it leads to suffering, you are engaging in unwise attention. When you look at yourself and see a solid and changing self that needs to be protected and defended, you are engaging in unwise attention. This is not a moral failing. It is simply what the mind does when it has not been trained to see clearly. But unwise attention does not arise in a vacuum. It is itself nourished by something deeper, by a lack of restraint in the sense faculties. The Buddha taught extensively about what he called guarding the sense doors, and in the context we have from his teachings, he asked his disciples about how they were training their faculties, their ability to perceive and respond to the world. 6. When we encounter sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and mental phenomena without any training, without any discipline, we are constantly swept away by reactions. We see something beautiful and immediately grasp at it. We hear something unpleasant and immediately push it away. We taste something delicious and immediately want more. This constant reactivity keeps the mind in a state of agitation, unable to settle into the deep clarity that allows wisdom to arise. And beneath the lack of restraint, there is yet another layer. The Buddha identified the 5 hindrances as powerful forces that obstruct clear seeing and perpetuate ignorance. These are sensory desire, will, sloth, and torpor, restlessness, and worry, and doubt. When the mind is clouded by any of these hindrances, it cannot perceive things as they truly are. It is like trying to see your reflection in water that is covered with algae, or churning with waves, or muddied with dirt. The reflection is there, but you cannot see it clearly. Similarly, the truth of reality is always present, but when the hindrances dominate the mind, we cannot perceive it. Now here is something fascinating, something that might shift your perspective entirely. Notice that we have been tracing a chain of conditions, each one feeding the next. Ignorance gives rise to unwise attention, which strengthens the hindrances, which leads to more ignorance. But this also means the chain can be broken at any point. You do not need to go back to some mythical beginning of ignorance and fix it there. You can interrupt the cycle right here, right now, this very moment. Every time you bring wise attention to your experience, every time you observe a pleasant feeling without immediately grasping at it, every time you notice an unpleasant experience without immediately reacting with aversion, you are weakening the chains of ignorance. You are starving it of the nourishment it needs to survive. Let me share with you a story from the time of the Buddha that illuminates this teaching beautifully. There was a monk named Malunkyaputta who came to the Buddha with a mind full of metaphysical questions. He wanted to know whether the world was eternal or not, whether it was finite or infinite, whether the soul was the same as the body or different, whether the Tathagata existed after death or not. He was frustrated because the Buddha had not answered these questions definitively, and he threatened to leave the Sangha if he did not receive satisfactory answers. The Buddha responded with a famous simile. He said, imagine a man who has been shot with a poisoned arrow. Before allowing the doctor to remove the arrow and treat the wound, this man demands to know who shot the arrow, what clan he belonged to, whether he was tall or short, what kind of bow was used, what the arrow was made of, what kind of feathers were on the shaft. The Buddha said this man would die before all his questions were answered. The point of this story is not that philosophical questions are unimportant. The point is that some questions, while intellectually fascinating, do not lead to liberation. The question of where ignorance originally came from is like asking who shot the arrow while the poison is spreading through your veins. It is far more urgent and far more useful to ask, how do I remove this arrow? How do I stop the poison? How do I heal this wound? In the same way, asking what sustains ignorance right now and how can I weaken it is far more useful than asking where it came from in some unimaginably distant past. But I know that some of you are still not satisfied. There is a part of the mind that genuinely wants to understand the metaphysics of this, that feels unsettled by the idea that ignorance has no beginning. So let us explore this more deeply, because within this apparent paradox lies a profound insight. The teaching of dependent origination, Paticca Samuppada, is one of the Buddha's most important and most subtle teachings. It describes how all phenomena arise in dependence upon conditions. Nothing exists independently, nothing arises without a cause, and nothing remains static and unchanging. When we apply this teaching to ignorance, we see that ignorance does not exist as a fixed thing that appeared at some point in time and has remained unchanged ever since. Ignorance is itself a process, a dynamic pattern that is constantly being recreated moment by moment by moment. In a very real sense, ignorance is being born right now, in this moment, through the conditions that give rise to it. And it can cease right now, in this moment, if those conditions are removed. This is revolutionary if you really understand it. You are not burdened with some ancient ignorance that has been accumulating since the beginning of time. The ignorance you experience is fresh, it is new. It is being created right now through the processes of your mind. And this means it can be ended right now, not through some cosmic effort to undo billions of years of conditioning, but through the simple and immediate act of bringing wise attention to your present experience. The Buddha expressed this in the formula of dependent origination when he explained that clinging arises dependent on craving. Craving arises dependent on feeling. Feeling arises dependent on contact, and so on through the 12 links that describe the perpetuation of samsara. When asked about this process, the Buddha was clear that he did not say there was a person who clings, as if there were some eternal self doing the clinging. The question is not who is doing this, but what are the conditions that give rise to this? This shift from who to what is crucial. It moves us from metaphysical speculation to practical investigation. Now, let us pause for a moment. I have been speaking about profound philosophical concepts, and I want to make sure we are connecting this to your actual life, to your actual experience. Because if this remains only an intellectual exercise, it will not liberate you. It will only give you more concepts to cling to, more ideas to defend, more knowledge to mistake for wisdom. Think about a recent moment when you suffered. Perhaps it was a conflict with someone you love. Perhaps it was anxiety about the future. Perhaps it was regret about the past. Perhaps it was simply a vague sense of dissatisfaction, a feeling that something was not right, that life was somehow not as it should be. Now, without analyzing too much, simply ask yourself this question. In that moment of suffering, what was I not seeing clearly? What aspect of reality was I overlooking or distorting? Was I perhaps seeing myself as a solid and changing entity that was being threatened or deprived? Was I perhaps seeing the situation as permanent when it was actually fleeting? Was I perhaps taking things personally when there was actually no one to take offense? This is how ignorance operates in everyday life. It is not some abstract cosmic force. It is the moment-by-moment failure to perceive things as they truly are. And because it is moment by moment, it can be interrupted moment by moment. The Buddha taught that there are specific qualities of reality that ignorance prevents us from seeing. These are the three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena, known as impermanence, suffering, and non-self. When you truly see that all things are impermanent, the grasping mind relaxes its grip. When you truly see that clinging to impermanent things leads to suffering, the wisdom of letting go naturally arises. When you truly see that there is no fixed and changing self at the center of experience, the whole edifice of self-centered craving begins to crumble. But here is the challenge, and I want to be honest with you about this. Intellectual understanding of these truths is not enough. You might read these words and think, yes, I understand. Everything is impermanent. There is no self. Clinging causes suffering. But this intellectual agreement does not transform the deep patterns of the mind. What is required is direct insight, a seeing that goes beyond concepts, a knowing that arises from the depths of contemplative experience. This is why the Buddha emphasized practice so strongly. It is not enough to hear the teaching. It is not enough to think about the teaching. You must practice the teaching. You must train the mind to see clearly, to attend wisely, to guard the sense doors, to weaken the hindrances. And this is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing discipline, a way of living, a continuous unfolding of awareness and wisdom. Let me offer you a specific practice that directly addresses ignorance. This practice can be done in formal meditation or in the midst of daily life. It is simple in its description but profound in its effects. The practice is called noting impermanence. Whenever you notice any experience arising, whether it is a thought, a feeling, a sensation, a sound, or any phenomenon at all, simply note to yourself that this is impermanent. This is changing. This will pass. You can use whatever words feel natural to you. Some practitioners simply note arising and passing. Others note changing or impermanent or flowing. The words are not important. What matters is that you are training the mind to perceive the impermanent nature of all experience. At first, this practice might seem mechanical or forced. You might feel like you were just putting labels on things without any real insight. This is normal and expected. Continue the practice. Over time, something shifts. The noting becomes automatic, and then it becomes unnecessary, because the mind begins to perceive impermanence directly, without the need for words. You start to see the flickering, shimmering nature of experience, the way thoughts arise and pass like bubbles in a stream, the way emotions rise and fall like waves in the ocean, the way the sense of self is constantly being constructed and deconstructed moment by moment. This direct perception of impermanence is a powerful antidote to ignorance. It is not a concept you are holding onto. It is a seeing, knowing, a direct apprehension of reality as it actually is. But let me share another layer of this teaching, because some of you might be wondering about something. If ignorance has no beginning, and if it is constantly being recreated through conditions, does this mean liberation is also beginningless? Does this mean we have always been free? We just do not know it? This is a beautiful question, and it points towards some of the deepest teachings in the Buddhist tradition. In certain schools of Buddhism, particularly in Zen and in the Mahayana teachings on Buddha nature, there is an understanding that our true nature is already enlightened, already free, already pure awareness. Ignorance is sometimes compared to clouds covering the sun. The sun is always shining, always radiant, always present. The clouds do not diminish the sun. They simply obscure it temporarily. When the clouds disperse, the sun is revealed, not created anew, but simply seen for what it has always been. This teaching might seem to contradict the earlier emphasis on practice and effort. If we are already enlightened, why do we need to practice? But this is not a contradiction. It is a paradox that, when properly understood, deepens our practice rather than undermining it. We practice not to create something new, but to remove the obstructions that prevent us from seeing what has always been present. We do not become enlightened through practice. We simply stop being ignorant. There is a famous Zen koan that expresses this beautifully. A student asked the master, "What is Buddha?" The master replied, "The mind is Buddha." Later, another student asked the same question, and the master replied, "No mind, no Buddha." When asked why he gave contradictory answers, the master said, in the first case, the student needed to find the Buddha within. In the second case, the student was clinging to the idea of Buddha mind and needed to let go even of that. The point is that teachings must be appropriate to the condition of the student. Sometimes we need to hear that we are already Buddha to inspire confidence and trust in the path. Sometimes we need to hear that Buddha is not something to grasp at, to prevent us from turning even enlightenment into another object of clinging. The skillful teacher knows which medicine to offer for which ailment. So where does this leave us with the question of where ignorance comes from? Let me attempt a synthesis that might bring together everything we have discussed. Ignorance, in its ultimate nature, is not a thing that exists somewhere with a beginning and an end. It is a process, a pattern, a way of relating to experience that obscures clear seeing. It is beginningless in the sense that we cannot find a first moment when it arose, because the very search for a first moment is itself a manifestation of ignorant thinking. It is also endless in the sense that it will continue perpetuating itself as long as the conditions that sustain it are present, but it is not ultimately real in the way we usually think of things as real. It is more like a dream that seems vivid and compelling while we are dreaming, but is revealed as insubstantial the moment we wake up. The Buddha taught that all beings have been wandering in samsara for an inconceivably long time, bound by ignorance and craving, experiencing birth and death again and again without end. But he also taught that this wandering can come to an end. The fetters can be broken, the roots can be cut, the liberation that seemed impossible becomes actual, becomes real, becomes your lived experience. And this is the great good news of the Buddha's teaching. You are not condemned to suffer forever. The ignorance that seems so solid, so impenetrable, so much a part of who you are, is actually empty and insubstantial. It has no core, no essence, no ultimate reality. It is like fog that seems dense and impenetrable until the sun rises and it simply disappears. Where did the fog go? It did not go anywhere. It simply ceased to be when the conditions that sustained it were no longer present. Your liberation works the same way. It is not that you will gain something you do not currently have. It is that you will stop doing something you are currently doing. You will stop creating ignorance moment by moment. You will stop feeding the hindrances. You will stop engaging in unwise attention. You will stop grasping and averting and identifying with what is not truly you. And when you stop doing these things, what remains is not nothing. What remains is clarity, peace, freedom, love, wisdom, compassion, the natural radiance of the mind that has always been present but obscured by clouds of confusion. Now, I want to address something that might be arising in some of you. Perhaps you are feeling overwhelmed. Perhaps you are thinking this is too difficult, too abstract, too removed from my daily struggles. How am I supposed to attain this lofty enlightenment when I cannot even manage my anxiety about my job, my frustration with my partner, my grief over my losses? I want you to hear this clearly. The path is not about achieving some perfect state in some distant future. The path is about this moment, right now. Every moment of clear seeing is a moment of liberation. Every moment of wise attention is a moment of wisdom. Every moment of non-clinging is a moment of freedom. You do not have to wait until some mythical future when you have attained full enlightenment. You can taste freedom right now in this breath, in this moment of awareness. The Buddha was once asked what distinguishes his disciples from ordinary people. He could have spoken of supernatural powers or advanced meditative states. Instead, he pointed to something much simpler. He said that when feelings arise in my disciples, they know that feelings are arising. When feelings pass away, they know that feelings are passing away. 5. This simple knowing, this bare awareness of what is happening as it is happening, is the beginning and the end of the path. Everything else is elaboration. So let me offer you some practical guidance that you can apply immediately, without waiting for years of retreat practice or advanced meditative attainment. The first practice is simply to pause. Throughout your day, whenever you remember, simply stop what you are doing and take 3 conscious breaths. Notice the sensation of breathing. Notice the feeling of being alive in this body at this moment. Notice whatever thoughts or emotions are present without trying to change them. This simple practice of pausing interrupts the momentum of ignorance. It creates a gap in the stream of reactivity where wisdom can enter. The second practice is to question. When you notice suffering arising, when you notice yourself getting caught in anger or fear or craving or aversion, simply ask yourself, what am I not seeing clearly right now? What am I taking to be permanent that is actually impermanent? What am I taking to be satisfying that actually leads to suffering? What am I taking to be self that is actually empty of self? You do not need to answer these questions intellectually. Simply asking them opens the mind to new possibilities, loosens the grip of fixed views, invites wisdom to arise. The third practice is to let go. When you notice yourself grasping at something, wanting it to be different than it is, clinging to pleasure, or pushing away pain, simply relax. Soften the body. Release the tension. Open the heart. You do not need to do anything special. Simply stop doing what you have been doing. Stop the grasping. Stop the pushing. Stop the struggle. Rest in the openness of this moment, allowing whatever arises to rise and whatever passes to pass. These 3 practices, pausing, questioning, and letting go, are the essence of the path. Everything else, all the elaborate teachings, all the sophisticated philosophy, all the detailed analyses of mind and consciousness, serve only to support these 3 simple movements of awareness. Let me share one more story before we begin to conclude. There was once a Brahmin who came to the Venerable Mahakaccana with a profound question about whether anyone could truly be free from the bonds of desire and wrong views too. This was not an idle philosophical question. It was a question born of genuine longing for liberation, genuine doubt about whether such liberation was possible, genuine hope that there might be a way out of suffering. The Venerable Mahakaccana answered with directness and compassion, "Yes, there are those who have become free. The bonds can be broken. The chains can be removed. Liberation is not merely a theoretical possibility. It is an actual attainment that has been realized by countless practitioners throughout the ages." This is important for you to hear. The path works. The practices are effective. The liberation that the Buddha taught is not a fantasy or a hope or a distant ideal. It is a real possibility for you in this life, perhaps even in this very moment. Not because you are special or particularly talented, but because the nature of mind itself is such that when ignorance is removed, wisdom naturally shines forth. You do not need to create wisdom, you only need to stop obstructing it. The Buddha also taught about what is not truly ours, what we should let go of. He said that form is not truly ours, and we should abandon it. When we cling to the body as if it were our permanent possession, we suffer. When we cling to feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness as if they were a solid self, we suffer. Not because there is something wrong with these phenomena, but because we are relating to them in a way that is out of alignment with their actual nature. They are impermanent, and we treat them as permanent. They are unsatisfactory as objects of ultimate refuge, and we treat them as if they could give us lasting happiness. They are empty of self, and we treat them as if they were the core of who we are. When we stop this misperception, when we see things as they actually are, suffering ceases, not because we have escaped from the world or destroyed the phenomena that seemed to cause us pain, but because we have corrected the fundamental error in perception that was the real cause of our suffering all along. So here we are, approaching the end of our exploration together. We have traveled through some of the deepest and most challenging territory in Buddhist philosophy. We have confronted the paradox of beginningless ignorance. We have explored what sustains ignorance in the present moment. We have discovered practical methods for weakening ignorance and allowing wisdom to shine forth. And we have glimpsed the possibility of a freedom that is not somewhere else, not at some other time, but available right here and right now. I want to leave you with a practice that you can do in the next 5 minutes. Immediately after this teaching ends, find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Sit comfortably, with your spine upright, but not rigid. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, allowing your body to relax and settle. Now bring your attention to the simple fact of being aware. Not aware of anything in particular, just aware. Notice that awareness itself is present, luminous, open, spacious. This awareness has no beginning and no end. It is not created by causes and does not cease when conditions change. It is the ground of all experience, the space in which all phenomena arise and pass away. Now notice that thoughts may be arising in this awareness. Feelings may be arising. Sensations may be arising. These are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains unchanged. In the same way, all phenomena arise and pass within awareness, but awareness itself remains clear and unobstructed. Rest here for a few minutes, not trying to do anything, not trying to achieve anything, trying to become anything other than what you already are. Simply rest in the natural clarity of awareness itself. This is not a technique that will eventually lead to liberation. This is liberation itself, tasted directed, known immediately, present right now. The more you return to this simple resting in awareness, the more the clouds of ignorance naturally disperse. Not because you are fighting them or pushing them away, but because you are no longer feeding them with attention, no longer sustaining them with grasping. My friends, we have explored together one of the most profound questions in all of spiritual inquiry. Where does ignorance come from? We have discovered that this question, while valid and important, points beyond itself toward something even more vital. Not where did ignorance come from, but what sustains it now, and how can we stop sustaining it? The Buddha walked this path before us. Countless practitioners have walked this path after him. And now, you are walking this path, with each moment of awareness, each moment of wisdom, moment of letting go. You are not alone on this journey. You are supported by the Buddha, by the Dharma, by the Sangha, by all beings who have ever aspired to liberation, by all beings who are aspiring right now. May your practice deepen. May your wisdom grow. May your heart open to embrace all beings with boundless compassion. And may you realize the freedom that has always been your birthright, the natural clarity of awareness that is obscured by nothing, limited by nothing, dependent on nothing. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said that ignorance is the greatest impurity. The implication is clear. When ignorance is removed, what remains is purity itself. the natural radiance of the awakened mind. This purity is not something you need to create. It is what you are when you stop obscuring yourself from yourself. If this teaching has touched something in you, if something has shifted or opened or relaxed, treasure that. It is a seed of wisdom that, if nurtured through practice, will grow into the full flower of awakening. Return to these teachings again and again, not as intellectual knowledge to be remembered, but as doorways to direct experience, as invitations to look deeply into the nature of your own mind. The journey of 10,000 miles begins with a single step, but really, the journey is completed in every step. Every moment of awareness is the destination. Every glimpse of truth is enlightenment itself. You are not traveling somewhere far away. You are waking up to where you have always been. Be gentle with yourself on this path. The habits of ignorance are deep and persistent. You will get lost again and again. You will forget what you have learned. You will fall back into old patterns of reactivity and suffering. This is not failure. This is simply the nature of the path. Every time you wake up again, every time you remember the teachings, every time you return to awareness, you are deepening the grooves of wisdom in your mind. Eventually, wisdom becomes the default rather than the exception. Eventually, clarity becomes the natural state rather than a fleeting glimpse. Until we meet again, practice with diligence and joy. Remember that you are not practicing to become something other than what you are. You are practicing to discover what you have always been. And what you have always been is already complete, already whole, already free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings realize the wisdom and compassion of their true nature. May all beings awaken.